Hello and welcome to episode 100 of Cutscene Convos. We have got a very different but nonetheless
Mm,
very exciting episode this week. We have got the Percy Jackson finale. We're going
yes.
to look back at where we've been. We're going to look at where we're going. We've got some very interesting nerdy news this week.
Mm,
And we have got the grand final of the Content Championship, which is Return of the Jedi versus Lord of the Rings. But
yes.
before that good stuff, Horizontal, how has your last 2 years been?
Last 2 years.
Yeah.
Oh, a lot of ups and downs over the last 2 years.
Yeah, it's been a wild couple of years, that's for sure.
God, how it's so like it doesn't feel like a lot's happened in 2 years, but when I look back, like a lot of like things going up and then things going down, and
Do you know what
then
it's kind of been? You know the I think it's called the sand heap paradox, where it's like if you remove a grain of sand from a heap of sand,
mm,
at what point does it stop being a heap?
I get you.
Yeah, and it's like at no point can we really look and go that was a big change, but
Yeah,
very slowly over the 2 years there's been like a lot of change. Like 2 years ago, I was literally starting my job, having been unemployed for a year.
yeah.
Now I'm 2 years in there and getting ready to buy my first home.
I'm still where I start.
Look, you're in a new relationship.
Yeah, I've ended up in a new relationship. I'd say my career's taken a bit of a turn in direction,
Yeah,
not
it's
necessarily for the
changed slightly.
better, but we move. Um,
Yeah,
Location hasn't changed,
you have
but
moved people though.
I have. I've done a lot of. I've become like an odd jobs man in the
Yeah.
last year.
Are we gonna get your white van?
Yeah, if you need any decorating or jobs doing when you move in, just you can pay me in pizza. um, but yeah, I know what you mean. Like, and looking back, it's like 2 years. It's like one episode a week doesn't feel like a lot, and then here we are on episode 100.
Yeah,
It's
out of nowhere. I said to my parents a couple of weeks ago that we were coming up to episode 100, and they're like, "Has it really been 100 already?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's been a long old while
it
that we've been
has.
building towards this. It's crazy." But as always, there's a character profile this week.
There
But
is, and I'm gonna pour a
since
drink while we're doing this.
since it's episode 100, I've decided that I'm going to let our egos have a little bit of fun this week.
Mm.
So this week's character profile is on us. It is on the channel. It is on the podcast. It is on Cutscene Convos. So
Hmm.
let's get straight into it. Cutscene Convos first appeared on December 19th, 2021. Born to Connor and Horizontal, after months of going around in circles about starting a podcast, they
Yep,
left their screenings of Spider Man No Way Home and knew it was time to get to work.
this is
The
true.
first full episode went live on January 8th, 2022, with only audio. Hori recorded all of it from his setup, and I only had my phone and earphones for audio capture. Episode 7, which went live on February 18th, 2022, would see the first cutscene episode to include video. Despite still only having a phone and headphones, we were keen to improve, and as such launched our secondary videos, our segments from each episode, broken down into their individual topics and uploaded. Episode 13 aired on April 15th, and it was at this point I finally moved from my mobile phone setup and earbuds to a full PC setup, and the cutscene as we now know it fully began to take shape. Initially, the plan had been to focus solely on DC and MCU news, projects, and reviews. But
Yep.
before long, Andor and Kenobi would pique our interest, followed by Rings of Power, and then other projects. We became an all round show covering all things nerd that interested us. It's been 107 weeks since episode 1, meaning we've only missed 7 weekly episodes in 2 years. And in that time, we have uploaded 3,950 videos to YouTube. This includes full episodes, segments, and shorts.
Mm.
as well as YouTube and the podcast platforms, we now also have expanded and we have a Cutscene TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, all of which are at Cutscene Convos, which I'm still proud of that we managed to get the at everywhere. That's basically
Yeah,
impossible in the modern internet.
this is
Um,
true.
but it's crazy.
It is
And we'll talk
wild.
about it a little bit. We'll talk about it a little bit more after the Percy Jackson review. But I just can't believe 100 episodes and like looking back at like even just the audio quality before we had video is just
I
it was
forget.
scratchy.
I forget what it was like. What I was doing back then as well with like the way I was doing the audio. And it's like you mentioned 3,950 videos. I've gone through, knowing we were doing this, grab stats from YouTube.
Go on.
So in the lifetime of our YouTube channel, so the 2 years, we've had 544.8 thousand views,
Insanity.
over 500,000 views. We've had 5.8 million impressions.
That's crazy.
Unfortunately, 90% of our viewers are not subscribed. So if you haven't subscribed already at this point in the video, please go hit the subscribe button.
Oh, he's there. He's on the quick draw. Love that.
Also like it while you're at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, this is interesting. 95% of our views have been on shorts, which just shows in the modern day like
Power.
how strong short form
Yeah.
content is. Something that I love is our top video in the 100 episodes to this day is still the video on Henry Cavill, us discussing about Henry Cavill
Oh
announcing the 40K
yeah.
projects. That video went off. Like,
It's got
I mean,
1,800 views.
I don't blame people. It's Henry Cavill.
Do you know what it was? It was the perfect storm, that video. There wasn't a lot else going on.
There wasn't.
Henry Cavill had a lot of hype because he'd just come back as Superman and then
Yeah.
wasn't going to be Superman. Warhammer's a massive universe, and the thumbnail for that with a really high quality picture of Henry Cavill taking up so much of the
Yeah.
screen, it is so incredibly clickable. It
Oh,
was
yeah,
just the
and
perfect storm.
For people to, I think the fact, like you say, the perfect storm of everything that happened with Superman, then he announces he's doing this 40K project, like, it popped. Now, our top short, a lot more recent, is actually the Spider-Man 2 was robbed at the Game Awards short.
Yeah, that one did bits, didn't it? It had what, 10.2?
Something like that. But yeah, I also did, obviously, people were upset about that. But yeah, I thought those was
that was a slow burner for a short as well, because it'd been up for like a day and it done really well and I was really happy with it. And then I woke up the next day, so about 36 hours later, and it had gone from like 2,000 to 11,000 or whatever it was overnight. And I was like, oh
short form
shit.
content for you.
Yeah,
It just pops.
it builds so fast.
Yeah, I thought like I know you look at analytics more often than me because often you're the one who tells me like, oh, this video is doing well.
I am a massive rat for analytics, and I'm not sorry.
I've learned over the years to pay as little attention to it. Usually, like on my own stuff, I look like monthly at most.
I check 12 times a day, and that's probably a conservative estimate.
So for me, it's like I haven't really paid much attention to like what our 100 video episodes have done, and seeing that like we've had like over 500,000 views is kind of nuts.
Yeah. The impressions one's always, because like it's just the bigger number is always more jaw dropping. So like seeing that amount of impressions is always like Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's really really cool. Right, should we get into some traditional bread and butter before we move on to even more patting on the back?
Yeah, I think we should.
So Percy Jackson, one of our surprise standout shows of late last year and coming into this year, had its finale this week.
It did.
Now, of course, I think the big talking point from us is probably going to be Lance Reddick in what is, I believe, going to be his last live action performance. I don't think he's got anything else that he'd worked on. But before we get too much into this individual episode, how do you feel about the way the season wrapped up?
I felt like it was fine up until the like right at the end.
Okay.
It felt like some weird time jump shit that was a bit confusing.
I think a bit of it is the problem I mentioned last week I was starting to have, and I
Mm.
said it feels like that problem is accelerating week on week. While I think a large part of this episode was fine, I do agree that the last third of the episode
Mm.
very much felt like okay, we've got to get all of this stuff into these last 15 minutes instead of this is the stuff we still need to cover. How long do we need to do that properly?
Yeah. It kind of felt like we'll obviously get into it, like the dream stuff at the end with his mum, it almost was to try and answer, has his mum come back, but then also gave them an excuse to just time jump ahead forward and be like, oh yeah, she's been back for ages, like, but without just like going to that point in time and then
Yeah.
us not, like, they tried to give us the payout of everything and also jump ahead to set up season 2. Like, it just felt like a bit of a, but I want to
So,
say one
go on.
thing. I was correct.
Yeah, you did get there.
Luke was a rat.
So that was the thing I was really curious to see at what point you would pick up on.
Okay.
And also, like, I don't think the show, like, unless you'd read the books, I don't think the show really gave you too much to work with there.
No.
But yeah, I think you pieced it together pretty well towards the end. There, you're like the shoes was really smart from you. I'll give you credit there.
The shoes was the biggest tell. I was like, the shoes just got pulled in. Grover wasn't like, they were given to Percy.
Yeah, Luke gave them directly to Percy.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, and people who've read the book might need to correct me on this. I am 99% sure at the end of the first book, Sally, like, brutally murders Gabe.
Oh.
Because in the book, he's, like, very abusive.
Yeah.
And it was kind of hinted at earlier on in the show of him, like, trying to say that Percy had killed his mum. And I was like, okay, so maybe they'll pay that off later, but they're living somewhere. It looks like it's still New York and still the flat they were in before, although you can't tell for certain. So did she kill Gabe? Did she not kill Gabe? Because I feel like that's a weird thing to have take place off screen.
Well, did you... Gabe's the boyfriend, right?
Yeah.
Did you not watch like the little post-credit-y thing?
Was there a post-credit scene?
Am I going to have to spoil this to you right now?
Yeah, no, you're going to have to tell me. I didn't even think about it.
So you know how week by week usually it does the graphic end credits and then it shows you like a preview?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a preview this time. And I always do this on any show now, which is where I scrub the timeline on credits to see if there's post-credit stuff. And I was like, oh, there's a bit. So this is going to reveal what happens to him. Okay, he's not murdered by her.
Okay.
They are in the New York apartment. He's on the phone coming down a corridor to his lawyer discussing the fact that she's divorcing him.
Oh.
I presume his lawyer, and being like, I can't believe she's divorcing me, blah, blah, blah. And then he arrives at the door for the flat and he goes to try and open it and he goes, she's changed the locks on me. And then he's on the phone to his lawyer and he's like, you don't know how to pick a lock, do you? And then he's like, hello? And his lawyer's obviously hung up.
Okay.
He's in the corridor. There's a box, a parcel by the door that says return to sender. And he's like, return to sender to Percy from the gods. And then he cuts it, like rips it open, and he just turns to stone in the corridor.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So he has been dealt with. He is
gone. He's been turned to a statue.
I don't feel like he's big an idiot now, because I was like, surely they're going to like address what's happened with Gabe. Like that, I know that is a major plot point from the books. Okay, cool. So I just missed a post-credit scene. That's fine. I think overall this show I'm very happy with, and I cannot wait for a season 2 should it get greenlit. Yes. I don't see any reason it won't get greenlit, but the sounds of it's done very good numbers on Disney Plus.
Yeah, it seems to have done well.
My only concern is I don't want them to try and force it into 8 episodes again if it doesn't need 8 episodes. If it needs more episodes, do more episodes.
Yeah, I'd like to hope that if it's done good enough numbers and Disney are like, yeah, sure, go for a season 2, they have a bit of leeway to now be like, look, we want to do a slightly longer season. Now we've proven that people want this, so they can feel they can spread it out a bit.
Because I'm not being funny.
Hmm.
None of the actors or the quality slash complexity of the CGI and areas demand $15 million an episode.
No.
The show doesn't look that expensive. It doesn't have that many actors that are that expensive.
Hmm.
If they can't find a way to take that 8 episodes on 15 million an episode
Yeah.
and make it 12 episodes if they need, or 15 episodes if they need, on the exact same amount of money, there is a bigger issue over there with whoever's running the show.
Yeah. I'd like to think that it was Disney were kind of like, look, you've got 8 episodes to do a season one. Essentially to be like, look, prove to us that this is going to do well.
Yeah.
And they had a set story they wanted to tell in season one, so they made it fit into the 8 episodes. Hopefully, and I'm sure the fans would obviously want it to slow down a bit or spread out a bit more when we get more of the book into the show. But I'm with you. I think season one was good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed how it wrapped up with his dad, and I mean Lance Reddick did an amazing performance.
Such a good job as Zeus. He just has this. He has this.
Yeah.
Had this commanding presence
To,
that you're just like, I can believe you are
do
the
you know
king
what though? It's
Olympus.
like obviously seeing him, and I was like, that's Lance Reddick. Forgetting that I don't know if he'd been teased to be in, or if
I
we'd
mean, he
been.
was announced. He'd been announced like as one of the
Yeah,
first signings of this
I
project
thought
that
so.
he was going to play.
But it's like
Him being cast as Zeus is actually what piqued my interest. I was like,
I
oh, he's a good casting for Zeus.
when he spoke, it felt like I haven't actually heard his voice in ages. And from someone who had a period over the last like a year ago, whatever, where binge Destiny 2, and obviously was hearing him loads,
Yeah,
it was like a hit. I was like, I feel like I'm listening to Zavala again.
yeah,
This is but yeah, he did an amazing performance as Zeus, and he's so good. It's such a shame that he's not going to get to continue that.
yeah.
I did enjoy though how Percy's dad kind of appeared and
Yeah,
all that
it
reveal.
was it was very good. It's so weird because obviously it is a war and it's terrible and it would have like destroyed the earth,
Mm,
but at the same time it's literally showing how immature the gods are because they're these big powerful things that should be able to sit down and just talk,
yeah,
because it's your brother, just sit down and talk to them, and it's like, no, we must fight to. And even after like he's like surrendered and that, he's like, we'll summon the council and let them know of my crushing victory,
yeah, he's
and then
still got
we'll
to rub
discuss
it in.
family business. Yeah, it's like the gods don't need superpowers and demigod children, they need therapy.
Yeah, family therapy.
Absolutely, that's exactly what they need.
Um, I was when they got back to camp, and obviously he was like, "Oh, why is so and so not been Clarice or whatever she was called?
Yeah,
Why she's still here?" And Annabeth's obviously like. Then they explain. I was like, is he not gonna like cotton on to the fact that Luke's shoe, or is there gonna be no mention of the shoes being dragged in, or like Percy just questioning why these shoes were being pulled into the pit, and then obviously like he all clicks on it. Um, I thought that was I thought they revealed that quite well.
I don't think they quite, and I don't know if it's because later on in different books Luke comes back or something, I don't know.
Hmm.
I feel like it would have been nice if they gave him a bit more time to kind of, as cliche as it is, like go through his evil plan a little bit more. Because like so far, it's like, I want your
Yeah.
help. Let's bring Cronus back. Let's stop the gods. And it's like, but why? Like,
Hmm.
yeah, you hate your dad. You have daddy issues. Cool, but why? Like,
Yeah, I feel like
I
they
feel
kind of
like there's more
just,
there.
yeah, potentially. My of what we were given, it kind of feels like they were trying to present the idea that he's just been corrupted. And it's like, maybe he doesn't personally have it, he just doesn't realize.
All I'm gonna say is Luke as a character speaks to my sensibilities. I don't believe in like a couple of powerful beings controlling everything.
Well,
Personally,
that's like why Chiron was like, said to Percy, some of that made sense to you, didn't it? And he was like, well, yeah, but he's still going about it the wrong way.
yeah, no,
So,
absolutely. And that's the thing. It's like bringing back Chronos, who is bigger and badder and scarier, is not the answer.
No.
Killing all of the gods, Kratos style, that's an answer.
It'll be interesting to see if, whether it's in season 2 or even further down the line, when, like, I presume they do re-meet Luke and Percy. I be interesting to see if at that point they actually have like a better conversation about
Yeah.
trying to persuade each other to go the opposite way.
I think I'd like to see like a. I don't know if this happens in any of the books. Maybe I'm waiting for series 5. I'd like to see like a common enemy story for them too. It's like we're both in a life or death situation right now. We fundamentally disagree, but if we don't
Mm,
work together right now, it doesn't matter who's right or who's wrong because we're both going to die. I
yeah,
think like with the way these two characters are set up, with being essentially two sides of the same coin, I think a common enemy kind of story could be really good for them.
yeah, I
But
agree.
we'll have to wait and see.
Yep.
Um, awesome. So, if you had to give it a rating out of 10,
Ooh.
where are you putting Percy Jackson and the Olympians season 1?
Hmm. I'm trying to, like, I'm thinking back on this year's show. Like, I'm like, I've got Loki up. Like, Loki was peak. Like, that season 2. Maybe like an 7, 8, somewhere
Okay.
around there. I
I can
really
go in.
enjoyed it. I think there was some pacing issues and like constantly like giving us a bit of time jump, which then lost some tension. But I
I
think
think I'd be
fundamentally it was good.
looking. I think I'd be looking kind of like anywhere between like 6.5 to a 7. So I guess if I'm saying
7.
that, it's like a scale out of 100 in reality, isn't it? It's like a 65, 67 out of 100.
Mm,
But I think if they allow themselves a little bit more time, if they don't feel this weird desire to meet like a 40-minute runtime, including credits,
mm,
they could have solved the problem, or they bump up to 10 episodes or 12 episodes. They solve all the issues I have, I think. Um, so if season 2 comes out and it's going to be like 10 60-minute episodes, I think we're in for absolute peak.
yeah, I think I'd like to see them do a longer season 2. I think that would help it a
Absolutely.
lot.
Absolutely. And Percy Jackson segments have done absolute numbers
Yes, they
for us.
have. So
So
more content for us means
yeah,
more viewership.
yeah.
The
I'm absolutely
people have
down
been
to
loving it.
watch more Percy Jackson. Yeah, the fan base is clearly craving for it. And I mean, while we have our opinions and our opinions are valid as people who've watched the show, I urge Rick Royden in the writers' room to listen to the complaints of the book fans, because they are the
Yeah.
people who made this series so large that Disney have spent all this money on it. Make sure you're listening to them and try and work out how you can not necessarily appeal. You don't want to always appease fans because sometimes they don't know what they're talking about. But as a general rule, if the entire fan base is going, we don't agree with that, either find a way to make them agree with it by
Mm.
telling the story in a way that makes them go, oh, that makes sense, or maybe listen and go, oh, maybe they have a point.
And something that, like, as both fans of Harry Potter, fans of a franchise will very quickly distance themselves from the creator of the book if they feel like they are not helping the books or that franchise. So
Yeah,
your fans are quite a powerful, and like you should pay attention to them because without them, your books and these things don't happen, like you say. So
exactly. But that is all for Percy Jackson season 1.
yes,
We'll be back when it's back, and in the meantime, we'll cover anything else that piques our interest.
yes, we will.
Um, Should we have a little moment of retrospection here, Horizontal?
Yes, as it is episode 100.
Yeah, we'll have a little sip of our beverages.
Yeah.
Tasty.
And we're announcing our retirement from. It was a good run, guys.
Nerdy shit. What you look how many comics I've not been able to read because of this shit. So the main things that I think it's really kind of key to talk about is kind of like how we feel the process has gone. Because and actually it's one that I've not written down. I'm going to put you on the spot for this.
Oh.
When, if ever, because you might not have, because I know I haven't. Not really. Have you kind of sat there like on a Monday or maybe a Thursday, like 2 a.m. on a Friday when you're editing, and you just gone, I'm not sure it's worth it. Can I be asked to do this?
there was definitely I've definitely had a couple of points where, like, and it's probably been on the days where I'm, like, busy on the Friday and I have had to get, like, everything sorted out on a Thursday night, and I'm like, it's 4 in the morning, and I'm scheduling all the segments and everything, and I'm just like, is this going to last? Like, how long can I do this for?
Yeah.
There's definitely been moments, and I think that's happens with, like, all content on anything you
Yeah.
do, but to the fact that we're at episode 100, most podcasts, like, we made a joke back in, like, episode 7 and episode, like,
Yeah.
most podcasts don't get past the first 10 episodes.
Yeah.
And I feel like I saw what was it on? I saw a clip or something from a podcast, and it was like, it was talking sort of about that stat, and also the fact that, yes, there's all these thousands of podcasts on Spotify and all this, only so many of them have passed this many episodes. There's kind of a strange weight to the fact of going, yeah, I have a podcast, and it's one that's been going, like, and one that's been running for a while. There's like
Yeah.
this strange sense of accomplishment that we've got from hitting like episode 100.
A really weird way to put it in perspective. There will have been someone born after our first episode that is now walking and talking.
Yeah, that's a bit weird to
That
say.
like just to kind of put that like perspective on it. It's a
Yeah,
long ass time.
yeah.
To like I think the most common reminder for me for how long we've been doing this is when I'm like thinking about doing a character profile and I'm like, have I already done this person? Because like when you've got to this many, bearing in mind I think every episode has a character profile other than maybe like one or two.
Mm,
I'm just there and I'm like, have I done this person before? It's absolute chaos. So a little bit of I guess behind the scenes.
yeah,
So Hori records everything his side.
yeah,
Um, then he edits up the full episode and the segments and does the thumbnailing.
yep. And I
Ye-
schedule.
Yeah. Then he gets the segments as they are cut up, uploaded to Google. I
Hmm.
then download them from there and I guess re-edit, cut up
Yeah,
to make into shorts, which then get scheduled to coincide. They all get linked in together, and then the shorts that I make at the minute and when I'm on it, which I am at the minute because it's New Year, goes on YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Instagram Reels, and Twitter. Although Twitter's being a dick at the minute. Um,
there's like the simplest way to explain it, or the simplest way to break down like how we run this podcast is you do the bulk of the topic prep.
yeah,
Um, I deal with all the long form, you deal with all the short form. And then social media is more you, but I want to try and lend more of a hand this year.
yeah,
That's like the simplest. And like that's come from over the 100 episodes. Like we've found our workflow of what works and how
well,
to make this
part
work.
part of it at the very beginning when I just had my phone was there was no way for me to help with the long form at all, and
No,
we
yeah,
knew
that's
we
true.
wanted to do short form. So I
Yeah.
was like, "That's what I can do. I will do it." And I actually do not remember. I had an oldish phone at the time, and I basically burnt that motherfucker out because I
I
went from
forget.
not using it that much
Hmm.
to editing it all on my phone, and it was like overheating
I used to have to
constantly.
chop the videos up more so
Yeah.
that your phone could handle chopping down the clips.
Yeah, it was ropes out there for a minute. When I
It
look back at like how easy it is now, because like honestly, that's come from like repetition and we know what we're doing and we're quick with it.
mm,
I'm like, I'm not even sure right now if I'd have the mental fortitude because right at the very beginning as well, we were doing like
yeah.
2, 3, 4 shorts a day,
Oh
and
yeah,
I was
we
doing all
well,
that on my phone.
yeah, at first we were that's the wild thing as well. Like when you look back at the stats of like we've done 3,000 odd videos, a bulk of that came from back when we started. It was the period of like short form where you upload mass amounts a day,
Yeah,
and that's what worked. So we lent into that with like splitting our segments up into parts. Whether you want to argue if that's good content or not, it helped kickstart things. And
that I think at the very peak we were doing.
5 a day.
No, we were up
Oh.
at 9 a day at one point. 63 shorts a week at one point we were throwing out there.
Yeah, that's wild.
Scheduled every like 2 hours or something with a break from like midnight to 6 a.m.
It's
It was
and that like the balance of you doing short form came from you were you were willing to like put yourself through that. I would not have had the patience
no.
to deal with that short form. But then also you didn't know how to like you hadn't done editing, so to deal with the long form just wasn't in your capacity
No.
either. So that's why I took that on.
Yeah.
But it's
And
kind of
like it
worked.
came at a price. I was so burnt out on editing by the time I got my PC. It's like you go back and look, there was no shorts uploaded once I got my PC for like 2 months because
Mm,
I had to relearn how to use a whole new editing software, and like shorts were starting to transition away from just throw shit at the wall into more like you have to think about what you're
yeah,
uploading. So then shorts have actually been like the biggest thing we've kind of
shifted
chopped and
around.
changed how we do. We've
Yeah,
tried 2 a day, 3 a day, 4 a day. I think we're currently in the best state our shorts have ever been,
yeah.
where I go through the segment, I find something that will grab your ear and your attention.
Hmm.
And like sometimes people will notice it. I'll say something like in a really much more energetic way. Because in my head I'm like, this will be a brilliant soundbite, and I'm like, and that cuts out,
But
goes up. It's what gets uploaded. And YouTube adding the whole allowing you to link a short to a video
yeah, that's been
has helped so
huge.
much in that respect.
Oh yeah, like we got this segment. Like I think you said it was episode 7. We started doing the segments.
Episode 13,
Or was it 13?
I
And
believe. Let
like
me just double check that.
we got the segments going pretty early on because we knew.
Episode 7, you were right.
Okay, we knew that like a solid long form upload a day. Also made
Yeah.
like gave us set topics. We knew what to stick to. It worked great.
Yeah.
Um.
And like our segments as a general rule do better than the full episode because they're the
Well,
titles
yeah,
and the thumbnails are more specific. They get their target audience easier.
yeah, and we got the formula down. It was then just kind of adjusting it, like you say, with shorts more so because shorts was so like in 2 years of shorts, TikTok, the space on TikTok has changed a lot. YouTube
Hmm.
shorts came around and like completely shifted things. So that area is always moving, whereas like YouTube long form is kind of like a pretty set formula of what you should do in a
Exactly.
way.
And and any changes that do happen to YouTube long form
Mm,
happen slower because of how much more grandfathered in the
mm,
top YouTubes are. They've been around for so long that anything that looks like it might be working, it takes longer for them to try it.
yeah.
Um, so that's just it's just the way it
It's
works.
wild though that our first shots were audio with a montage of random pictures,
Yeah,
and then
I
now
I
obviously,
that's what like melted my phone. Like me googling and searching to try and download photos to my phone so that I could put them in, and then like it was just absolute chaos. At one point, I'd try and make the because we were doing a lot of super showdowns were what we ended up turning
mm,
into shorts. What I was doing was I was trying to make as generic as possible a video montage so
uh-huh,
that I could put the different audio with the same montage to try and save time,
time, yeah,
because trying to find all these unique different pictures about the same topic for 10 minutes of talking about two characters fighting, trying to find unique pictures of each of the characters or the characters interacting is rough
mm,
without having just a static image on screen for so long.
yep.
Um,
As someone who has edited short form content for people who want that, like, oh, I have this clip. Can you also like just edit in like contextual imagery and video? And it's like that shit takes time. And when
yeah,
we were trying to produce like 6 to 9 a day, like that's a lot to ask of someone who is also working at a full-time job.
yeah. A full-time job where I was trying to learn lots of new things because it was an industry I hadn't worked in before. And yeah,
Mhm.
it was a in a lot, but it's one of these things that it's funny because like every kind of 10-ish episodes, we'll sit down, we'll look at how we've done recently, and we're like, right, what do we think might work? What do we want to change up?
Mm.
And then it's kind of like this perpetual kind of time sink cycle where like
Yeah.
we'll decide, okay, I'm going to do shorts this way. So I start doing that, and I have to learn how to do that. Not like
Mm.
learn, but I'll have to refine my process for that. So the first night I'll do it, I'll get home at like 5, and I'll be editing until midnight, and I'll get all that done, uploaded, sorted.
Yeah.
And then after doing that for 6 weeks, I'm doing it as fast as I was doing the way before, but we're seeing better results. So it's
Mm.
kind of like I get back to this point of like right now, like all my shorts and stuff I'm doing normally before we have dinner at like 7 when I get in at 5. I'm
Mhm.
like done. But eventually shorts will change or whatever, or I'll want to try something new, and I'll
Yep.
have to
Spend longer. Yeah.
yeah, and then it'll be 5-6 hours editing again. Then I'll bring that back down by getting more efficient with it. Um, I kind of did a little rough calculation. It's so difficult because it also depends on how much content we're covering.
Mhm.
But as a general rule, for most episodes, there was about 2 hours of content we needed to watch.
Yep.
So just going into that, you got 2 hours of watching the content.
Yeah.
There's about half an hour to write a character profile. About
Mm.
half an hour to grab the news is another hour. So that's about
Mhm.
3 hours. Then you've got recording, which is normally about 2 hours. Once you include like the bit we do before and the bit we do after.
Yep.
That's up to 5 hours. Editing's another between 2 and 5 hours. I'll say 3. That's 8 hours just to get everything out every week on top of a full-time job. And also we're both trying to do our own individual content, which is
Mhm.
about the same amount of time, and trying to also have any kind of a social life. And it's just all of a sudden it's a lot, and it's all prioritization. I mean, there's no
Well, yeah.
reason that we couldn't just go, we don't want to do this anymore, it's not worth it. But at the
Mm.
end of the day, like, I've had real shit days at work where I'm like, as I'm coming home from work, I'm like, I've got to fucking record tonight and I don't want to. But then
Mm.
after I get in, I eat and I sit down and I'm like, okay, no, this is good. It's cathartic.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something about, like, on some days I'm like, "Oh, it's right, it's recording day, I gotta do all this." But then it's like, after I've gone through it all and everything's scheduled, I'm like, "Yeah, that was just another week." Like, there was
Yeah.
something about making sure to every Thursday, it was like, unless we were ill or something was going on those
Yeah.
7 weeks that we missed, like, it became a habit and more of a discipline rather than this, like, being motivated, which I
Yeah.
think is what helped get past those odd days where it's like, "Oh, is this worth it?" Um, but I mean, editing on my side, I like you definitely put in more hours than I do on it, but I feel like I am always up so late. There's some, depending what I've got going on,
Do
the
you
long
work
forms
on short
change.
time frames?
Yes, that's the
Because
thing.
in reality, with the shorts, if I wanted to, now that we're just doing one short a day, which is by far better anyway, just for like
Yeah, you
content,
could
but
spread it
also
out.
it's less for me to do. I could, in theory, get in on a Friday, do the shorts for Saturday and Sunday, and then
Mm,
just do the day before, do the one for the next day. No, I don't do that because that doesn't work for me. But I could do that. Whereas, like you say, you are like, we finish recording, say, 10 o'clock at night,
yeah.
sometimes later, and then you
Oh,
have to
there
be
was
up
some
to,
like,
yeah, you're up to cut them all up, get it edited, get it thumbnailed, get it uploaded. And obviously, like, the shorts take 2 seconds to upload because I also have better internet, but also they're so short. The full, like, 2 hour video is going to take a while to upload. And you have to keep an eye on it in case it crashes out. And we've only had, what, one episode where it, like, crashed out uploading and you had to re upload it the next day?
oh yeah, it never processed. YouTube just didn't
Yeah.
process it for some reason. So it
Yeah.
went up
Usually
like
we're
an
having a really
hour.
bad day that
It went
day.
up like an
Yeah.
hour late. And I think there's only been like a couple of times where I've missed a segment upload because there's been a period where it's like most of the time I'll get all 5 segments up done or scheduled and ready to go on the Friday, just so it's done out the way. Don't have to think about it. But by the way, if you're doing content and you have a week's worth of content, just schedule it. Just get it, do it, sit down, do it all in one go. It feels like a lot in the moment, but it is so much better than having to worry about each day being like, oh shit, I need to post it for whatever time. But yeah, like you say, we'd finish around 10 p.m. I have to process the audio, then match that up with the footage. I've got a lot quicker with that. That's like a breeze now. Then it's you render out the full episode. Then I go through and chop it up, render out each segment. Then I also actually render out each segment with the intros so that they can be the YouTube videos. And now we have the little short in like episode release short.
Yeah.
Most of my time is actually spent waiting. So what I do is I bulk queue all the segments for rendering and I hit render all. So I sit there waiting ages for that. And then also uploading a full episode takes time because my internet's not the quickest. Especially when there was those couple of weeks where we were having like we had a 3 hour episode.
Yes, that 3 hour episode was a slog.
That YouTube did not enjoy my
No.
internet was not very good for that. But yeah, his quick turnarounds has been, but like you've got quicker with shorts, I got quicker with
Yeah,
process of dealing with the full episode.
it's just like literally everything.
Mm,
Practice makes you faster, it makes you do it cleaner, it makes you better.
yeah.
Like, even if you just look at like the quality of editing on our shorts just after I started doing shorts again when I got my PC versus now, they're so
Hmm.
much nicer, tidier, cleaner. You just get better at stuff as you do it more.
Yeah.
Um, and like I also think like a big thing has been like our confidence. I feel like just looking back at some of the episodes while I was getting ready to do this, we're a lot more. Although we're quite stuttery people anyway, just because our brains move faster than our mouths, we speak with a lot more purpose now. Like we know what we're saying instead of like waiting for the thought to appear as we're opening our mouth.
Oh yeah, we've got into a much better flow with the podcast, and like something as well. You mentioned it in the character profile of like how we started with the idea of this came from like we wanted the MCU stuff was going on. We had a channel in our Discord with our mates, and we used to talk about stuff in there. That's kind of where the idea was born from. I knew Star Wars stuff was going to come up, and I was like, I'm going to try and get that in on the podcast. And then obviously Andor is what sort of kicked it off.
Yeah, we're kind of what we're essentially in now is a spot where we've gone from just doing Marvel and DC because at the time we thought that was just going to be constant, and we
Yeah.
kind of under egged that, which left a little bit of space anyway, which is actually a good thing now because of how much space is being left in this year
Yeah.
coming.
Well, yeah. And I'm like, looking back, obviously we started this thinking, well, right, we're going to be MCU and DC. And I had in the back of my head, oh, maybe we can start adding Star Wars in, knowing that there was Star Wars content going to be coming. But like, that's kind of what we expected this podcast to be, like just a MCU DC. But like, I'm actually so glad that because of those gaps, we've become not just like a Marvel DC podcast. We are
Absolutely.
for the most part, a nerdy show and film, like nerd content podcast with like mentions of like other shows and stuff. Like the most recent example I can think is The Bear, and then
Yeah,
awards. And like we've added in news and talking about more relevant topics like award shows. But then also when we talk about award shows, we keep it focused on our stuff. But like
exactly.
this
But
became more of a podcast about our interests rather than just
yeah,
being a Marvel.
and I've loved Star Wars my entire life, but I was very much I don't want to say a casual because I don't do anything casually, and I don't mean that like I'm such a my
Hmm.
brain doesn't work that way. If I care about something, I care about it.
Yeah.
But doing this and like having a necessity to watch the Star Wars stuff to make sure I'm ready for the podcast
Yeah.
has brought back my love for it in such an aggressive way.
Well, I
Like
mean,
I'm just all in on Star Wars now in a way I've never really been in my entire life. I always enjoyed Star Wars, but now that I'm like having to think about it and look at the context in the great universe, I'm like, fuck yeah, let's do it.
yeah, I mean, I was obviously I was into my Star Wars and I was like well on it with Mando and stuff when that stuff was coming out, and could see that there was a ramp up of Star Wars content coming. So it's like obviously getting you in on that has been great and gives me, and it's also like you've got really into Star Wars now. It's if anything, it's got me more focused on Star Wars than I ever was and enjoying it more. But then I love that we've been able to add in like Rings of Power came along and we were like, screw it, let's just watch this.
Yeah.
And then
If we would have been too rigid, we wouldn't have watched Percy Jackson for the podcast.
no. Well, yeah, this is the thing. I think we added Star Wars because that makes sense. The first thing that was like different was Rings of Power. And I think making that decision to, yeah, we'll watch Rings of Power because we love Lord of the Rings. It's like nerd, like gospel. Why would we not also then dabble into
Yeah,
this realm? And then I think
exactly.
that opened the door to be like, oh, we can talk about whatever shows we want.
Yeah, it's kind of become more of a thing of do we deem it nerd focused,
Hmm.
and are we both going to watch it anyway? Because we were
Yeah.
both going to watch Rings of Power anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like, fuck it, just watch it when the episode comes out, and we'll discuss it. We may as well. We're doing the prep work for it anyway. We may as well get something directly from it.
Yeah,
But I also think like, and I don't have to say this without sounding big headed, but my knowledge of superheroes and comic book media and that kind of stuff is superior to yours.
yeah,
And then by having high fantasy and Star Wars stuff, where you have more knowledge than me, it kind of allows us both to exist in our own ecosphere, and it kind of gives us this kind of expert and casual for every
yeah.
topic, which allows, I think, a more balanced conversation. When it comes to comic book stuff that I know that you don't, you can be the casual fan who's finding stuff out. And then when it
Hmm.
comes to Lord of the Rings stuff that I don't know that you get to explain,
Mm.
it I think it
I
allows
think,
us to center around that idea we've had since the beginning of we want this to be a doorway into any kind of nerd.
well, yeah, it's what they started from in the channel on the Discord was MCU shows out. We'd all watch it at different points, whatever. We'd have questions. Often you would answer said questions. I'd pick up on some stuff that maybe like our mate Luke wouldn't, but then I wouldn't have answers. Like, and then the same started happening with Star Wars, but the flip. So
Yeah,
it just was like what we already were doing, and we realized, well, that just works the same as if we just discuss it rather than doing it in type messages to each other.
exactly, exactly.
And then something I think also, like you say about the casual and more expert dynamic, but also you've got I'm very creative. So obviously when I watch shows, I actually pay a lot more attention to visuals and the artistic side of things, where I would say you pay more attention to like actually how well it's written and put together and
Yeah.
the format of a show and like the pacing, something which then has caused me to pick up on that stuff more. And I
Oh,
think
I've
we've
learned so much about stuff I didn't even know just from like there's this weird kind of thing that like I think in the world now, if you say something with confidence, it doesn't matter if you're informed or not. But
just say it
but
confidently and people will believe you.
internally, yeah, internally, I'm also like, okay, I don't want to say something if I'm completely fucking wrong here.
Mm,
So I'm like actively going out to like fact check myself. And like, yeah, I
yeah.
accept that sometimes I'm gonna say stuff that's wrong, and that's fine, as long as when I get made aware of that, I accept that. But at the same time, like, I don't want to be that guy who's just coming on here spewing shit that's
Yeah.
all factually inaccurate. And also, like you said, with you knowing more about art direction and stuff like that, you have the way you point stuff out to me has allowed me when I'm watching stuff to like look at it in a slightly different way.
Mm,
I think I am, as a result of what we've done and the discussions we've had, I think I'm more critical of bad VFX, but I praise good VFX more
mm.
because I've now noticed stuff that I didn't notice before, and I'm like, wow, I know for a fact I wouldn't notice that before, so it's really good.
Well, yeah, that this is like a weird tangent, but that point of like you now pay attention to this and you spot the good stuff. Like VFX artists, when you see them like do interviews or anything, a common thing that's mentioned, I've seen mentioned a lot, is like people will always notice bad VFX. They will not notice good VFX because good VFX should go unnoticed. Like it
Yeah,
should be so seamless that you don't realize.
there's a famous one where it's like the glass in a car. I think it might be one of the Jurassic Park
Mm.
films, and it's like they couldn't have the glass in it. Oh no, it's the first Avatar film. And while I shit on Avatar, I am very complimentary of its
Well,
visuals.
yeah, the VFX is
Yeah.
next level.
So in Avatar, he's in the first one, he's in a helicopter, or like their like butterfly
Mm.
helicopter thing, and they couldn't have any glass in it because it would reflect the blue screen.
Yep.
So they had to CGI in all of the glass and the reflections, and you would never have known. It's
Yep.
perfect, and that's what you should be praising once you become aware of it. Obviously, if you don't notice, that shows how good it is.
Hmm.
But then when someone goes, "That was VFX," you should go, "Wow."
Yeah. It's
Um,
it's definitely open. Doing 100 episodes of this has opened me up to more shows as well that I wouldn't have
oh,
watched.
absolutely. You would never have watched The Boys or Invincible. I would never have watched Vox Machina
Oh
or
yeah,
stuff like that. Like,
yeah,
oh, at some point for like a separate video, maybe we should sit down and work out all of the stuff we've talked about, films and TV shows, and do a ranking list of how much fun it was to watch and go through it and all the hype around it. That'd be fun.
yeah.
Speaking of what we should do in the future,
Mm.
should we move on to our plans for the future? Because we already have
Oh,
some plans.
retirement.
Yeah, this is the end of Cutscene
Yeah,
Convos,
we made it to 100.
but
Psych.
maybe a season 2.
I suppose we can greenlight a season 2.
Yeah, season 2 is officially greenlit by Cutscene Studios. So before we get into the I have some kind of points about Delusion. Let's talk about what we have already kind of locked in as is definitely happening
Yeah.
post episode 100. So
So we're going into a season 2.
yeah,
That is kind of
you,
where now, for the most part, you won't. Well, episodes will carry on on this number.
yeah,
It's just a theoretical season 2, I guess you could say
yeah.
it.
We'll have a new playlist for the season 2 episodes.
Yeah. Uh, More so because we want to try some new things and kind of we've done 100 episodes. We've learned a lot. We want to push this to the next step of visually and how the content's done. So the idea of splitting it into a season 2 just made sense.
Yeah.
Going forward.
The editing style going forward is going to change, as well
Yep.
as the upload schedule.
Yes.
So from next week,
Mm-hmm.
main episodes will go up on Saturdays, not Fridays.
Mm-hmm.
So next
Same
Friday there will
time.
be no video whatsoever.
No.
But we have to allow that one day to build a buffer in, and then it will still wrap around as it does, just shuffled back a day. So we're going to continue recording on Thursdays, but by freeing Friday up as a segment day from the previous week, it's going to allow Hori to have a bit more creative freedom with the editing and try some things with less time constraints.
Yeah, it gives me essentially go from having 12 hours, I get an additional 24 on top of that to
exactly
turn an episode around.
And it's going to allow us to try more things, because the big thing we've done a lot of is try things with shorts.
Yeah.
And while shorts aren't perfect, we've seen a benefit from being able to try stuff with shorts.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can free up the time to be able to try stuff with segments and full length videos,
Yeah.
we're going to hopefully be able to see and find the same benefits. As well as, while Hori isn't exactly someone who wants to be in bed early, it means he doesn't feel a need to stay up till 4 a.m.
I mean, I've actually kept quite a good sleeping pattern so far this year.
Do you know what? With your obsession with Power World, I'm amazed that you've been sleeping as well as you have.
2 days when Power World dropped where I went to bed late. I degened. And then I was like, nope, I need to correct this and not let this become a habit again. And we're doing good so far.
So yeah, that I think that's the biggest change we're going through.
Yeah.
As a result of that, what I look like as a image quality
Con's getting plastic surgery.
Yeah. I might not look better because you can see me in higher quality, but I will be in a higher quality image.
Yes.
And we're going to play around with some stuff there. Hori's going to have, I hope, some fun with it. To see what he can pull off. You're also planning a new intro.
Yes, we're going to have a new intro.
We've got a little refresh of the branding.
Yeah, a little just a refresh and refinement, because a lot of that stuff, like the branding and the intro, like I smashed out for episode 1 and then we've just used since, and
exactly,
it was fine for what we needed. It served its purpose. We have 100 episodes under our belt now, though. I feel I can come up with something a bit more creative.
It's really weird because, like, while in reality there's not that much difference between episode 99 and episode 101. Episode 100 feels like a real kind of achievement where you can kind of go, right, that is behind us now.
Yep.
Let's get funky. Let's risk changing stuff.
Yeah. Well, we have a catalog of.
No, I want to get to 100 before we fuck with stuff too much.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense, right? You've done 100. You've proven, like, look, we can do this thing for 100 times over. Like, we can change it up now, and we know it's not gonna fail, or it's not gonna put us off wanting to continue, sort of thing.
The content championship is obviously ending.
Yes, the final today.
So we're moving on to our new bracket, which is going to be the fandom face-off, which could be a short bracket before we move on to another different kind of bracket.
Mm-hmm.
But but that is no longer going to be included in the full episode.
No.
Our logic there was basically episodes are long.
Yeah, some weeks it can get up to 2 hours. As much as I'm sure people love listening to us for 2 hours, not everyone has 2 hours to spare
Totally.
in one go. And I know from my personal experience, like if I see a podcast that's an hour to an hour and a half, I'm like, oh, okay, I can shut that on. See a podcast for 2 hours, I'm like, okay, I need to put that on at a certain time when I know I've got time to listen.
Once you're kind of like at the point where the first digits are 2, people are more apprehensive to click.
Yeah.
So we're going to remove that as the last segment because we don't want to get rid of that kind of
No,
style of content because it does so well for us.
We enjoy the content and we enjoy the discussion. We're just not going to include it in the weekly episode. It's going to be its own thing.
some of our superhero showdown ones still get views to this day. Like like decent views, they're just continuing to grow. So that style of content definitely has a place on this channel, but viewers aren't sticking around for it at the end of the episode, but they are still watching the video. So let's cut it off the episode, make the episode more condensed and easier to listen to, less of a commitment, and we will record that separately, and that will still go up when it goes up every week.
And it's almost essentially us kind of dipping our toe into just not repurposing the podcast for content, but actually just having like, this is a content piece that we are doing on its own, standalone.
Because I
kind of love that.
We've discussed, and this is kind of dipping into the ideal scenario that I was going to wait for, but it's kind of like the dream we've always had would be eventually to get to a point where we can dedicate enough time to this financially that we can have the podcast essentially just be the Nerd News Network, but with more thought put into it.
Yeah,
and then each segment is kind of a thing that we would script up, sit down, record, and that's its own thing that we spend a bit more time on. So the stuff wouldn't change too much channel wide, but each bit would be more focused on what we're trying to do. And then it would be more natural. And then the podcast would essentially become the Nerd News Network, where we talk about the weird and the wonderful and the rumors with a bit more time to go over them.
Yeah, and also like just our general like what we've watched this week and stuff, and be more be a more relaxed conversation in a way.
And I like it's crazy, but I'm trying to be more positive this year. I definitely think we can get there one day.
Yeah.
But there is, unfortunately, because the world sucks, there is kind of a level of financial success required for that to be possible.
Yeah. The podcast would have to hit a certain point for us to take that leap into dedicating that much to it.
Like I've played around a bit on my channel, like the first version of that went up today, of like scripting up a video and recording it. And I'll be honest, I had a very bad experience with writing during school because my handwriting was atrocious, which put me off writing because it was like a thing I kind of felt self-conscious about because it was such ugly handwriting. Whereas typing up has helped me kind of remove some of that. And I was pretty happy with the script I put together for like a first script that I put together.
Yep.
So the idea that one day we could get to a point where I get to sit down and like script up a video and like be a bit more cutting out like and and stuff like that, and put more thought into the words I'm trying to convey, I'd love that so much. Give me like probably if we could find a way from this to make like in a year 10% less than my annual salary, or just even just enough that I know my bills are covered, I'd probably be like, fuck it, I'm happier doing this.
Yeah, I mean, we weigh it up, right? If we get to that point, you weigh up the risk to the if it's worth the jump, so to say.
Exactly. But the biggest bit of news at the end of the day, this podcast has always been two friends sitting down, waffling about superheroes and space Jedi wizards and ancient golems and everything in between. And that is what we are at our core, and that's always what I want the first thing to be. It's like, if we get to the point where it's like, oh, do you watch Cutscene Convos? Yeah, then two fucking losers who just waffle. That's like, I'm more than happy to be known as the two losers who waffle. But do you know what's better than 2? 3. So
3 losers that waffle.
Yeah. So our friend Josh, who
Yes.
I believe appeared in episode 18 as a
Yeah.
guest.
And he came on. Did he not come on as the group session as well?
Oh yeah, we did the first New Year's Eve recap one with the 4 boys. Yeah. So Josh is going to join us once a month as our gaming correspondent.
Yes.
I guess is the best way to describe it. Josh is an absolute beast for staying on top of gaming news.
He is. And he's also obsessed with getting platinum trophies in almost any game he possibly can.
Yeah.
Purely just to have the trophy. And like, even if he's not that into the game, he'll get the game like completely. Like, the man's obsessed.
So once a month, starting from episode 102, Josh is gonna pop in to give us an update on all the gaming news. So gaming stuff will be leaving our weekly Nerd News Network as and when, and instead it will wait for that monthly roundup of anything that's going on.
For it.
And he will come in, he will do his bit, he'll talk us through the gaming news, and that will go up as its own segment. Once again, kind of just adding. We want to just add and improve and make it better. And for better or for worse, it's less strain on me or you to think of any gaming news that's relevant. We're gonna, in the end, bring more gaming into it, but in a more controlled way.
Well, yeah, it's like, rather than us dropping it in there, I was like, oh, this week we also thought we'd mention the fact that Spider-Man 2's game's done, or like whatever. So we leave that up to Josh to bring in. Keeps it to a more concise thing.
Exactly.
Let's just focus on watching our nerdy shows instead.
Exactly. Which I'm very excited for. Josh, he doesn't watch the podcast regularly enough to probably have heard this part. Josh is brilliant. He knows his stuff really well. The man is so plugged into the gaming world, it's unreal. To put in perspective, Power World, which has blown up, he mentioned to me and you about a week and a half before its launch, going, "This looks good. We should give it a go."
Yeah, he did.
Like, he's got his finger on the pulse of stuff.
He was like, Power World's coming out. We're trying it, and I was like, Power World, and then it was the Pokemon with guns, and I went and I was like, oh, I remember this trailer on the Xbox thing. I thought it was really weird. I'm so glad we jumped on it. Yeah. It's been such a good game.
We probably would have played it because of how big it got anyway.
Yeah.
But would we have organized it for as early as we did if Josh hadn't already mentioned it? So like if you were to tell me you've got to choose someone to come on and do gaming news once a month, Josh would absolutely be my first choice. He knows exactly what he's doing. So I'm very, very excited for that.
So is it in another 100 episodes we get to the point where I can persuade you to let Luke come on and we can talk about the F1?
Cutscene sport.
Yeah, cutscene sport segment.
I tell you what.
Or cutscene racing.
If Luke
wants to talk about F1.
If Luke feels the need to become our sports correspondent, I won't give you F1 solely. I'll give you a sports correspondent.
I only care about F1
because Luke pays a lot of attention to sport in general, like myself. So Luke,
yeah, but I don't care about other sport. I only care about F1.
Unfortunately, that's part of the deal, my friend.
We've got Luke reporting live from Silverstone as.
Now that we've got through the stuff that is already confirmed and definitely happening.
Yes.
Let's get a little bit delusional for a minute, and I use that word for a very specific reason. So, I'm sure I've mentioned it before, but a creator that I look up to quite a lot is Ludwig.
Yes.
And a number of years ago, he did a kind of like, "So you want to be a content creator" style video, where he talked through like, yeah, obviously a little bit of luck is required, but if you don't do these things, no luck in the world is going to help. About a week ago, he did an updated version because the landscape has changed so much.
Oh, I've not seen that.
And a big thing I took away from the video was him going, "You've got to be delusional, because becoming a massive creator is about as likely as winning the lottery."
Yeah, it is nowadays.
So you've got to be delusional. You've got to just throw yourself out there and genuinely believe that, yeah, cool. Only 1 in every 10 million people are going to be the next big thing. Cool. I'm the one.
Mm-hmm.
So this year I'm going to be delusional. I'm gonna back the boys in a way I haven't done before. I've always believed in our content, obviously, because I wouldn't do it if I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But the big thing that, like, one of the things I'm focusing on this year is not being embarrassed anymore. And there's
Mm.
like this weird kind of, it's always been there. Although I was really late to YouTube and everything. Like, I
Yeah.
fully got into Twitch and YouTube in like 2018, about a year before I met you, when Fortnite went nuclear. Like, in that scheme of the world, I'm so late and behind everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember people at school were getting mocked and bullied for uploading YouTube videos, which I think, although it wasn't something I cared about at the time, kind of still sat with me. I was
Mm.
like, oh, it's a bit cringe, it's a bit weird. I'm over it. I'm 24 years old. I'm in a relationship of nearly 10 years. I'm happy. I'm content. I'm making stuff I'm genuinely proud of.
Mm.
But who's got time to be embarrassed anymore? I'm uploading to my personal Instagram, my personal Twitter, on my stories. I am gonna force my content down every person who knows me personally's throat, so that if they don't support me, they're like, "Oh, I can't make eye contact. I deliberately chose not to watch this video. I feel embarrassed." I'm not gonna be embarrassed anymore.
See, I don't think I've ever been. Well, maybe this is because I got into doing YouTube on and off for years now, and like I mean, I got into streaming back when I got into playing League, which was when I was 17, so like 11 years ago.
2005, yeah.
I mean, it'd be what, like 2013, 2014 is probably when I first streamed, and it was League of
Yeah.
Legends. Most boring game I could have chose to start streaming on, but here we are.
Back in them days, no one cared.
But like back in them days, there wasn't this, like, it was still really new in the grand scheme of things. But it's like and before that, I was messing around trying to do COD edits, and then I was doing speed arts when I was in high school and posting them on YouTube, which is like, and I've gone back and found some of them, and some of the graphic stuff I was doing was atrocious, but I was learning Photoshop at like 15. I think I'm pretty used to not necessarily being embarrassed about posting stuff. My thing I've always struggled with is actually talking about, not kind of promoting myself,
Yeah,
not from an embarrassed way. It's like I'm very good at, like, with my photography. I post it. I don't care if I get likes. I don't care if I get views. I put it out there. I am happy with the photo, but then I'm really bad at being like, yeah, I did this thing. Like, I'll put it out there, and then I'm like, I move on to the next thing, which I know I've done a lot with this podcast. Is we've put out episodes, and I've been really bad for like being like, hey, we did another episode of the podcast. I'm just like, yeah, I'm putting it out there. It's like, I'm not cool. It's out there. I'm not, if someone finds it, I'm not embarrassed, but I've not sung my own praises enough.
exactly. And I think that's something we both need to work on, because
Mm.
whether it's everyone's cup of tea or not, we have worked hard to build something that is genuinely good.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think we are like the epitome of artistic discussion. I'm not like,
No, we're
I'm
not
not losing my
film
mind like that.
critics.
But at the same time, we have built, I think, a podcast that allows people to enjoy stuff but maybe aren't super nerdy for it, to be able to come in and feel like they're not being spoken down to. That was a big thing we always spoke about. It's like, if someone falls in love with comic books and wants somewhere to start, we want to be that safe
Yeah.
space they feel like they can ask the dumb questions.
Well,
Do you
yeah,
know what I mean? Like, that's always
it's
what I've wanted.
we've always wanted to be the place, like I said when we were like looking back and stuff, is like, this came from, we just wanted to discuss the shows we were watching, and I asked the questions or you asked, and we just discussed about what we were already talking about. We wanted to feel like a place where people that are watching these shows would be like, huh, I thought this about the show, but then they go and watch the video and like, oh, okay, someone else was thinking this, and it's like, it feels like people are listening in to just a discussion with their friends about the
Yeah,
shows that are coming out. And sure, we maybe put a bit more time and effort into like thinking about how these things are produced, or like reasons and maybe we'll go a bit more in depth than the normal average viewer might. But I think we've done a pretty good job over 100 episodes of building that. And while we may not be like the biggest podcast to be doing this area of content, I think we built a pretty solid foundation of like, we get like, we're not on like huge viewership, but like we get views, we've built that ground level, which a lot of podcasts never even make it to.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I will be able to sleep easy if we like never get a play button of any kind.
Yeah.
But if we start getting play buttons, you best believe that I'm going to go hog wild making this the biggest thing you've ever seen. I'm kind of I'm willing to work with the demand. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
going to work hard. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. And if it gets to the point where people are like, we want more, we want bigger, we want better, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. But if it stays at this level where it's a weekly podcast where we have regular viewers that we get to know in the comments or whatever, I can live with that as well.
Mm.
I've kind of entered a stage where I'm like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But at the same time, I'm going to try my best to be a friendly face.
I
I
get you.
think you see a lot of people talk about like comfort content creators.
Mm-hmm.
The notion that anyone, when they're feeling sick, puts on one of our podcasts, probably for your voice more than mine, and they're
I
like,
don't know what you
they
mean.
like lay there with like whatever their comfort food is when they feel like shit or they've had a bad day, and they
Mm,
binge watch the last 3 episodes. I would live my entire life happy if that's like how someone views our channel. Like, I could absolutely live with that.
yeah. Same.
On the flip side, I have so many aspirations if we make it bigger than that. If we start hitting play buttons, I'm so down for like I've seen some of like the ideas you've had for like your own kind of merchandise in the past when you've like mocked stuff up.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
so down to turn our logo into a little like snapback or beanie or hoodie, and
I
I
mean,
the letter C is so good for alliteration. I love alliteration. You'll notice it in basically everything we do.
so the comic books.
Cutscene coffee, cutscene comics.
It's coffee.
If
Well,
we were to get the opportunity, and this I've said this to Jenna a bunch of times, and I'll drag her in so she can confirm this. I would be the worst rich person ever, because what I would love to do is spin up a bunch of businesses that essentially operate as a non-profit. They're
mm,
like, right, I will take a salary, but I'm not going to do much. I'll take quite a small salary, and we're gonna cutscene cinemas. We're gonna run a cinema. We're gonna show the stuff that we want to see. We're gonna sell reasonably priced popcorn at reasonably priced tickets, and any profit we get, we'll put a little bit aside to make sure that if we have a bad month, that everyone still gets paid,
mm-hmm.
and everyone else is. We're gonna have the best paid cinema staff in the world. Like I would love that so
Yeah.
much.
I get what you mean. It's like, it would be amazing to get this to a point where, yes, the podcast is like the core of where this all came from, but like the idea that maybe down the road, Cutscene Convos essentially becomes a studio, and under
Yeah,
that studio, we can fund like, I don't know, a comic book where it's just like the publishing costs of a comic book,
yeah.
or help like more independent things, or maybe that, like you say, cinema, or that, yeah, you can do merch and you can do all these other things. There's a lot of ways that we would love to like take this and push it into those areas that we love and what helped create the podcast essentially. And it's like, yeah, if we can get to that point, it'd be amazing.
Just imagine like a comics is obviously something that's really close to my heart.
Mm,
Imagine the idea of, I don't know, like I think like the golden tier would be like invited to get a credit and collaborate on like a Marvel comic. So like, we're doing a Marvel Creators Run, which I think they've done stuff like that before, and we get to go in there. You get to influence the art style. I get to influence the story. Like that would be. I think I would live on cloud nine forever if we got to do that. I don't even think I'd bother to look at Twitter to see if people liked or hated it. Just knowing that I was involved in something like that, I think I'd get issue one, I'd frame it, and I'd just stare at it happily for the rest of my life. But on the flip side, like you said, being able to fund, like if we like opened up submissions for someone who's got a comic they're trying to make, and we saw
we
one and
get
we're like, that's really cool. Let's put our stamp on it and fund it.
Well,
That would be fucking awesome.
to like take a page out of some creators' books, there's a bunch of the top streamers, like Soda Poppin and stuff, that while some content creators in the streaming space have been like, "Oh, I'm starting a game studio and we're gonna make a game," not to disrespect someone, like they think that's their way of getting into gaming, when it's like, respectfully, they know nothing about building a game studio and how to make a game. Whereas like Soda Poppin and stuff have started a publishing company, so they can be like, "Yo, indie developers, we have this huge reach, we have the funding, like, bring us your game ideas, we'll help publish you."
Yeah.
I think that's a better approach, and it's like the idea that like Cutscene Convos could become a comic publisher, and it's like these independent comic guys are coming to us and like, "Yo, I've got this comic run," and we're like, "Holy shit, this is such a good comic. We will help you publish this and get it out there." To get to that point would be amazing. Whether that also then is like publishing for like, I don't know, an animation studio or something as well under that. Like, imagine there's we have an animation studio that we help publish for, and it's like they get to do a Star Wars Visions episode. That would be fucking amazing.
I think the best way to describe what I would love for this to be is for this to be the building block off which we get to pursue even more of our passions.
Mm.
With yours being artistic and mine just being kind of like storytelling, yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
would be great if we can sit there and just go like, you get to sit there and spend a month designing your own kind of shoe collection. Like I love trainers, and it's like, yeah, this is Cutscene Combos collection by Horizontal. These are fucking sick. This is inspired by Star Wars. This is inspired by Lord of the Rings, by Marvel, by DC. Look at these, they're fucking awesome. Or like you said, publishing an artist who's doing something we love.
Yeah.
I just, and don't get me wrong, like this is so like big picture, and there is a
Yeah.
99% chance that we don't ever get there. But like Ludwig said, you got to be delusional. You got to think you're the one who can do it, and best believe, and you can hold us. You can clip this right now. If we get big enough, that's I'm more than happy to live like off a slightly above average wage for my entire life, no matter how famous this podcast gets, if it means we can just throw money at stuff we are passionate about. At the end
Mm-hmm.
of the day, we both lived our lives with very moderate upbringings and very moderate lifestyles. Loads of money isn't going to change my passions, but having loads
No.
of money to throw at my passions would make me happier than being a billionaire. I mean, I
Oh,
don't
I've
think anyone who's watched any of these 100 episodes thinks that I'm the kind of person who thinks billionaire should exist.
if
I'd much rather throw money at the
don't
ability.
worry, we all know that I would end up having to be CEO because Connor could never be a CEO.
Oh, yeah, no. Let me just be like a vision officer or something. It's fine.
It's fine. I'll be CEO and I'll take my 5 million salary.
There is zero chance that happens because don't forget, I'd still be 50% owner.
I know.
But yeah, I'd love for this just to become like that first cog that just allows loads
Yeah.
of creative people to do creative things. Even if we could just get like on a smaller scale, a less outrageous scale, even if we could get like you said, like a cutscene studio where we allow someone like Josh to come and record a cutscene gaming show where he just gets to discuss everything gaming, and you and Josh do like you and Luke, sorry, do like a Formula One show. Me and Luke do like a
Well,
football
yeah.
or a cricket show. Just everything that just passion in everything. Just what do you feel passionate about today? I really want to paint this wall. Okay, we're gonna record it. Just do it with passion. I don't care.
Yeah, like realistically, like a more realistic but still out there goal is this gets to a point where we have it can provide us the means to have a space, like you say, so this podcast can maybe be done in person. We can also then use that space for all of the content and give our friends places to pursue their content and stuff as well.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, if we can get to this point where it funds what we're passionate about creating, then that's all we need it to do.
Exactly. Should we get into some nerdy news network?
Yes, I think it's time to bring it back to a normally scheduled video.
Regularly scheduled programming.
Yeah. So let's get into some news.
Netflix chief content officer
Mm.
says they'll never do a theatrical release because their paid members come to Netflix for movies.
I think it's a bold
Fuck
statement.
Netflix. Anyone who is anti-cinema, I am anti them. We need to protect cinemas.
It just seems wild to me that they don't see the benefit of like watching a film on a big screen in that atmosphere. Like, I get it. They don't want to pay cinemas like these big companies. Essentially,
But cinemas are getting bent over anyway. You know what I mean?
they are, and they're trying to they then bend over the customer to make their money. But like, I get them not wanting to have to play by someone else's rules because that's not what Netflix has ever done. The shock to me is the fact that like Netflix hasn't even considered the idea of like opening their own cinema where they
Yes.
control it. Like the fact that there's not like a Netflix cinema for their own theatrical releases, and could even mix in like, oh, there's Stranger Things currently coming out. Like, you can come and watch the weekly episodes at the cinema and watch it on like a big screen and surround sound for that experience. I'm sure people would pay to do that. But yeah, it's bold from
Netflix
them.
Netflix was a pioneer. And I don't
Yes,
use that word lightly, but they were a pioneer. They
they
went from
were.
this thing, and I remember this vividly as a Christmas present. We got a Netflix subscription, but that was back when Netflix did DVDs,
Oh yeah.
and they send DVDs out and you send them back. We didn't get the most out of it because it was a dog shit system. And then they pivoted towards streaming content,
Mm-hmm.
and they became the biggest thing in the fucking world. It felt like overnight.
Yeah,
So the
they
fact
like
that they now think they're too good to do theatrical releases is crazy to me because I'm going to be honest, 80% of the films Netflix do, I will never ever watch because there is no hype around it because it's never been to a cinema. There wasn't a premiere. It just appeared on there one day with no kind of media around it. So I don't even know if I'm interested in it because I've not even seen a trailer. And while I'm scrolling through Netflix, I'm not going to watch their trailer they've got on there.
here's the thing. When Netflix came out, I would say you knew everything that was coming out on Netflix. Like when it was first around, it's like, oh my god, Strange Things. And I was watching those. I I haven't like gone to Netflix to watch something. I actually want to say since last year's F1 Drive to Survive. That's the last series where I was like, oh, it's out. I'm going to go to Netflix and watch it. Like,
Yeah.
I've occasionally browsed it when I'm with my girlfriend. We're trying to find something to watch, and she might have put something on. But like, Netflix is no longer on there as like my go-to to like straight away to find something to watch.
Netflix is probably my
Yes.
tied third option. I go Disney Plus first because that's where a lot of like the
Yeah.
rewatch binge stuff I like is. Then it's YouTube, and then depending on what I know I might want to watch, I
Mm.
go Prime Video or Netflix.
Yeah. See, I would probably add in my like I have Disney Plus is generally where I go first. Then it's if I'm just wanting to like random videos and whatever, I go to YouTube. If I'm wanting like kind of just a series to put, I actually go Crunchyroll for anime now.
Oh, you big weeb! Look
And
at him with his
then
beanie and his beard and his fucking weebness.
hey,
Fucking hipsters.
anime is good, man.
This
Um,
woke mob ruining it for the rest of us.
um, and then after that, like you, it's like Prime or Netflix. And actually, I would probably say Prime then Netflix.
It absolutely depends if I know I want to watch a particular kind of show, that will depend where I go on like my flow chart.
Yeah,
Um but yeah, bold from Netflix and I think a
yeah.
big thing to say. Family Guy's 25th birthday, which means it must be Hori's 50th birthday this year at least. And Seth MacFarlane has said there is still a large appetite for it,
Mm,
and he doesn't plan on stopping anytime soon. Now, I have made it very clear, mostly over the last few weeks, that I'm a big Family Guy nerd. It is one of my go-to
yeah.
rewatch shows. I love Family Guy. I kind of, do you know what? When I first fell in love with it, BBC Three.
Yes. Yeah.
Then they got rid of
Oh my
BBC
God,
Three, and I
BBC
couldn't
Three.
watch it for years. And then
What
it
a
came
what
to
a
Disney Plus,
yeah.
and that was one of the best days. I think since it came to Disney Plus, I've watched the entire series at least 3 times over.
I don't think I've actually like sat and watched it properly since the BBC Three days, I'll be honest.
And it's so interesting because, like, it might surprise some people that Seth MacFarlane says there's still a big appetite for it. TikTok has given Family Guy a whole new lease on life.
Yeah, though also I'm not like massively surprised because Family Guy's thing has always been essentially poking fun at current events. That's like, yes, there's the underlying story of different things going on, but like often it's current events or future current events that they predict and happen to come true, time travel, that like they're poking fun at, they make comedy out of. So it's like, it's always going to be relevant because there's always governments doing dumb stuff to make fun of. So it doesn't surprise me there's still an appetite because it's basically just the next generation get to watch the comedy made of this shit that's happening around them.
Let me be completely clear. Family Guy, despite being an adult show, is designed for 15-year-olds. Which, I mean,
Yeah,
you can have your own ethical debates about. It's designed for 15-year-olds. That is the target audience, whether
yeah,
they admit it or not. But there's also this weird kind of thing where me now being a 24-year-old, I watch it and I'm like, I remember when I thought that was like the best joke ever. But that slightly higher brow joke that they make as a joke about it being a joke
yeah.
is also really fun. I enjoy it kind of in more of a satirical way instead of a slapstick way now.
I get you.
Um, and I like it, and like the political comedy in it is funny because yes, it does I think beat the shit out of the right wing more, but the left wing doesn't get completely spared. It
No.
enjoys poking its fun at it. And yeah, I don't want Family Guy to stop anytime soon. I get no show should really last for 25 years. But we're also from England, where Emmerdale and Coronation Street have been on the
Yeah.
scene for ever. So I'm okay for Family Guy to keep going.
But then you also look at like The Simpsons has been going for years, and it's like there is a
Exactly.
place there for an animated show with that context of like what that show covers. It's like, yeah, it can keep going.
But maybe we won't be able to watch Family Guy anymore
Mm.
because Hulu and Disney Plus have added terms into user agreements that bans subscribers from password sharing.
Is this
Completely unrelated. Have you ever noticed how the Captain Morgan bottle has a pirate on it? A pirate on it.
Hmm.
Very interesting. So
Is
yeah,
this
sorry about that. You're
still
not allowed
Canada
to.
based at the moment?
No, because if it's in their full user agreement, I believe that goes worldwide.
Oh,
Unless I've missed something, as far as I know, this is them taking the test they've been doing in Canada for a few months
going
and
global.
sending it global with it. We'll see how long it takes and how quickly they strike down on it.
Hmm.
They may go the route of for a little while they just kind of have it in there, and if anyone's really taking the piss, they use it to get rid of them. But at the same time, they're not going to permanently ban anyone because they want your money. They will just cancel your subscription and go, you can only use one address, or they'll just lock out one address. What I've got to be honest about, and I'm going to be honest because who gives a fuck? If Disney are watching this, send us the bag and we won't rag on you. But I currently hold the Disney Plus subscription that I use, my father uses, and our house uses, as
Hmm.
well as Jenna's mother and Jenna's sister. That is currently 3 households.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Jenna are obviously about to move out, which will make it 4 households.
Yep.
I swear to God, if when we move out, we get banned at our new house when I'm the one who pays for it, and there's no way I can go, no, this is the home address, and then just inform my parents, Jenna's parents and sister, that they need to pirate it or pay for it.
Yeah.
I'm going to be fuming. If they don't
Yeah.
give you the option to go, no, this is my home address, that's bullshit.
Do you know what's better? I have technically 4 households already on mine. There's me, my girlfriend where she lives, my mate down south, though I don't know how often he uses it, but he's on there. And then I actually have one of the KCP lads in America is on mine. So it's
That'd be
like
funny.
that's real.
That will get
That
cut
that
off real
I was
quick.
gonna say that might get me flagged very quickly. I don't know how often it was back when Kenobi came out. I don't know if he's still using it. He might be.
Yeah, but like, who gives a fuck? As long as the person creates their own profile and doesn't fuck with what I'm watching, I would give my password to anyone.
Well,
Like in that
we talked
context.
about this back with Netflix when they did it. They need to give up on this like idea of controlling password sharing because you're just gonna like push your customers away, and instead like make the payment be like, oh, you can only have 2 screens streaming at one time, or like the base cheapest subscription fee is 1 screen.
So this is interesting
Go on.
because Disney apparently the wording in the user agreement does talk about subscription. So people are saying they might be introducing a more expensive tier that kind of allows for multiple households. Now, I am going to be honest, and I'm not one to normally say billionaires are being reasonable. I think Disney as a cost analysis kind of thing is actually quite reasonable. So, if it costs me like another 20, 30 quid a year to allow it to be across the 4 households with no issue, bearing in mind we're all splitting that payment, so it's not as bad anyway, I'll
Yeah.
be completely okay with that. But if they just go, no, you need 1 per household, that's what pisses me off. I have no problem with Netflix or Disney or any streaming service going, we've detected multiple households. If you don't want these people cut off, it's an extra £2 a month or £10 a year, £20 a year. Do you know? At that point, I'm kind of
Yeah.
like, you know what? That's okay because right now maybe they're logged in for free. I would just ask them to chip in. They'll still be paying less than a full Netflix subscription, but that'll sort out the prices. I won't be out of pocket. They'll pay less than they have to, and Netflix, Disney, whoever gets the extra revenue they're looking for.
Yeah. Fair.
However, if they're going to be greedy fuckers about it, I
Mm.
will join my friend Captain Morgan and throw on a sailor's hat and sail the 7 seas. Because it's not even that I can't afford it or don't want to pay it. There's a principle thing where I'm almost at the stage of like, if you're going to be dicks when you don't have to be, I will go to the nth degree to just make sure you get no money.
Yeah. It baffles me that their only direction they seem to want to go is no password sharing when you could just be like, well, you're limited to like if you pay the basic plan, you get 1 screen at a time. And then
Why do you care where that screen is? Yeah.
yeah, it's like it makes no difference. I get that like technically this would be like for me it'd be 4 subscriptions they should be having, but it's like no, you're more likely just to lose free subscription like free people, and
If
then
someone's sharing a password, it's not so they can both use Netflix or Disney constantly. It's because
no,
there's one thing they want to watch.
yeah,
I mean, Netflix's original subscription pricing was based on the amount of screens that could use it at the same time. I don't know if that's still worded the same, but their basic was like 1 screen, their middle was 2 screens, and their maximum was 4 screens.
well
Why
it's
does
like
that? Why do you care where them screens are? You shouldn't care if them screens are all in the same house or dotted on the 4 corners of the globe. It
no,
shouldn't matter.
well it's like Crunchyroll going about anime. Theirs is a thing of is how many screens you have, and if you pay the better model as well, you get like offline mode. So like they have it as yeah multiple because they understand that people share one account because for things like anime someone might watch one singular anime show and don't need a subscription for them all, but that's the only
Yeah.
place to get them. So yeah,
But and then on the flip side, there's some good news coming out of the Disney Plus direction.
there is.
Um, while Percy Jackson and the Olympians season 2 hasn't officially been greenlit yet,
Not as far as
the
we know. No.
writers' room is reported to be making great progress on the scripts for season 2, which is good
I
news.
I wouldn't be surprised if, although it's not been officially greenlit, there was something in their clause for season 1. If you break this target, we'll greenlight a season 2. They might know that they've passed that target, and it's just documents need to be signed. But
Based on the publicly available numbers, sorry, I would be amazed if it doesn't get greenlit.
yeah,
I mean, a good barometer is ironically our view count on videos.
Yeah,
Because videos that do better than average generally mean
there's a
that
lot of
there is
people
a
watching.
very dedicated community and not that
Yeah,
many people making videos about it.
yep,
And I think that is always a good barometer that shows outperformed what you can expect from it.
agreed.
Um, Matthew Vaughan
Mm,
says snippets he's seen of Deadpool 3 have him convinced that it will save the MCU and that he'd be interested in doing a Superman Red Sun adaptation with Henry Cavill in the lead role. This was all discussed on the post-credits pod.
right.
That was going to be our name until we realized that podcast existed. The bastards. It's a class name. We came up with it genuinely completely
Yeah,
separately,
we
and
did.
then we found out they existed. So he was doing an interview over there. He said he's seen some bits from Deadpool 3 and he genuinely thinks it's gonna reinvigorate the MCU based on Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds' performances. The Red Sun adaptation. So Red Sun is an Elseworld story
Okay.
where Superman lands in Soviet Russia.
Oh,
So
okay.
you get like a communist Superman,
Interesting.
which is of course very interesting.
Yeah.
And he said he'd be interested in doing that potentially with Henry Cavill.
Imagine.
I imagine, and I would never accuse anyone of saying something just to add a little bit of retweetability to it,
Yeah.
but I would imagine he's thrown Henry Cavill in there as a name just to give it a bit more legs.
Well,
But
yeah, he
I think that
knows. Go on.
Henry Cavill played a bit of a darker Superman, which I
Yeah.
think translates perfectly to Red Sun, because I wouldn't say the Red Sun is an evil Superman, it's just a different ideology. And I think Henry Cavill's slightly darker tone works perfectly for that.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like he knows the DC fans loved Henry Cavill. They were sad to see him go. What a way to get a headline going is to say, "Oh, I'd love to have Henry Cavill do a Superman Red Sun," and it's like, also then potentially pitch that to James Gunn. So
Yeah.
makes sense.
Um, Millie Alcock, I think I
Yes.
pronounced that correctly, has been cast as the DCU's Supergirl. The
Mm.
23-year-old Australian is probably best known for her role in House of the Dragon.
She
I'm
was.
not familiar with that.
I
I
watched it.
had a little look at other stuff she's been in, and that's the only like name that jumps off at me as a big project. So no harm, no foul if she's been in other stuff that I should know.
In House of Dragon, she obviously played the, I forget the character's name, but she played one of the younger versions because obviously there's a lot of like time skipping in that.
Yes,
Um,
because I watched
uh,
that.
she was very good in House of Dragon. Um, I don't see her doing a bad job as Supergirl. And
She
I
has a
can,
very Supergirl vibe. She's got that kind
yeah,
of platinum blonde hair. She's the right kind of height. So Supergirl for me has always been someone that you look at and you think they're not that big and strong, but at the same time they're Kryptonian.
and
Visually, because that's all I have to go on, she
mhm.
looks like a great casting.
Yeah, and also considering we know the Supergirl is this one that's based off the
Woman of
comic.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't hate the casting. I think it was good and like visually, like you say, and then also she was great in House of Dragons. I enjoyed her in that, so I'm sure she'll do a great job.
Awesome. Set photos of
Mm.
Daredevil Born Again in New York have been leaked, and they confirm that Foggy and Karen are back.
Leaked.
They well they were filming in public areas in New York because they were getting out, which so like a lot of them are like you can see the person filming it behind like
Yeah.
police barriers saying this is a filming set. But yeah, they weren't trying hard to stop anyone being able to get the footage. But on some of the buildings you can see Nelson, Murdoch, and Paige. You see some scenes with them walking with Matt. We're so back, baby.
Oh
Let's
yeah.
cook.
I mean, a little part of me is like, Marvel's let that. They've not tried to quell any leak there, knowing that the fans were like, we need Foggy and Karen back, or you're not doing this properly. And this is them going, look, we're doing it right now. You can all be quiet and trust us. We know what we're doing. But yeah, very excited to see them back. And
I will say, now that I've seen that, I'm going to try and avoid any more Daredevil spoilers.
Oh yeah.
And if you guys care about Daredevil as well, I suggest you avoid them spoilers.
Oh yeah, I try and avoid any leaks and stuff as best you can.
But Daredevil has nothing on these two. We've got Return of the Jedi and Lord of the Rings Fellowship in the Rings in this week's Content Championship Grand Final. This
Yes.
bracket has been many, many weeks in the making.
I feel like we said this when we got to the final of the superhero showdown. It
Yeah,
was like weeks of that, and then it was like, oh my god, we're finally at the final. I feel like the same
yeah.
again.
Look, I can hardly even remember doing superhero showdowns.
Yeah.
We've done so many of these now.
Honestly.
But we're here. We finally whittled it down. I'm just going to quickly go through each of our finalists route to the final.
Okay.
So, Lord of the Rings took on Iron Man 1 in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
Then it took on Daredevil, the Netflix show, in round 2. Then Rogue One in the quarterfinal. And then the Winter Soldier in the semi-final before making its way here. Return of the Jedi. Where are we? Took on Matt Reeves, the Batman, in round 1.
Oh, what a
Yes.
shit, what a film.
Breaking Bad in round 2.
Yeah, haven't seen it.
That's why I got through. Andor in the quarterfinal
Oh.
before Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban in the semi-final. 2 absolute Goliaths that have been tested throughout their entire route to the final. They have not had a single easy matchup, but they always come out just on top.
Yeah, they've proved themselves going
Exactly.
through this bracket.
As always, we have
Yes.
6 categories to help us make these impossible decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Personal relevance, how well has it aged, rewatchability, story, acting, and cinematography / general visuals.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be a rough one.
It really is.
For the 2 semi-finals, I went in kind of knowing who was going to win.
Yeah.
I don't have a clue.
I
So,
have.
Hori, would you like to start us off with your personal relevance?
This might be out of like all the categories, I actually think this might be the hardest one for me. Because these 2 films are almost like my 2 starting canon events for nerdom.
They're like Mount Rushmore of nerd films.
Yeah. There's like, it's literally the 2 sides of my nerdom that I love. High fantasy and like sci-fi / cyberpunk like realm. And it's so difficult to pick which one means more to me when you've got the first Lord of the Rings film that kicked it all off, that like you watch and you're like, holy shit, fantasy. And what a great story. And then you've got the end of the Star Wars trilogy that is like, it comes to an end and it's like, holy shit, I love Star Wars.
Yeah.
I can't remember which came first. I feel like I have a stronger memory of watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy because I was introduced to it, I'm pretty sure, by my uncle. Whereas Star Wars was something that it was probably on TV one time and my dad or mum wanted to watch it and I watched along. Where it's a more vague memory of that first watch through. So I have to say, I think I lean more towards like how strong of a memory of Lord of the Rings I have. But like they're both there as like my core nerdum foundation.
Fair enough. I'm going to be honest. This is actually the easiest category for me.
Oh.
Because I've made no secret of the fact high fantasy isn't my go-to genre. It's not.
Fair.
It's not where I live.
Yeah.
And it was only kind of like maybe the second or third time I watched Lord of the Rings that I really, really like fell in love with that world and like got it for the first time.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh, they're good, well put together films. But like probably the second or third time I watched it, I was like, oh no, I get it. I get the appeal.
Mm.
Return of the Jedi is just, for me, I was a child when I saw it. My dad had seen it in cinema when it first came out. It was space wizards who look goofy as fuck fighting to save the universe, and there was cute teddy bear things helping. At the end of the day, we have made no secret of the fact that I'm basically a functioning anarchist.
Yeah.
The Ewoks are the personification of me. Fuck the authority, get the fuck out of my way, let me just run up and down trees and have a great time. While I adore Lord of the Rings and understand all it's done for the nerd genres, for
Yeah.
me, Return of the Jedi is, I love it.
Fair.
It's everything I want. I want to turn up with characters I know
Mm.
in a situation that seems dire and
Mm.
just just watch it unfold. There's so many good moments in that from start to finish. Han being freed, the Sarlacc pit,
Yeah.
fighting Darth Vader and dealing with Palpatine, Darth Vader turning back to the light. The imagery as well, as like I've rewatched Return of the Jedi time and time and time and time and again to just see things that I never noticed before and like learn more about it and see it. It's just, I love it so much. It's personal relevance. If you said you can only watch one of these films again for the rest of your life, I'm taking Return of the Jedi.
I don't actually know if I could pick. That's
How well is it aged?
oh. Both have aged phenomenally. There is a reason they are like both held as like the gods of nerdom almost.
You don't get this deep in the bracket if you haven't aged extremely well.
Yeah,
Let's be honest.
I almost want to say Lord of the Rings has aged slightly better because its fandom's just as strong as Star Wars, but it hasn't had additional, like it very recently got additional content, and it, like also you got the Hobbit, but like for the most part, the amount of content Lord of the Rings has had compared to Star Wars, yet the fandoms are both so strong.
Yeah.
I want to lean in towards Lord of the Rings has aged better.
Wrong.
Oh.
Return of the Jedi came out in what year, sorry?
Oh, you're gonna go off pure age.
1983.
Okay.
This film is a masterpiece and people are still watching it. Do you know how few films from the 80s people from my generation, because you are a different generation to me, millennial head ass. Do you know how many people that are Gen Z can get through a film from the 80s?
Oh, I
It's
mean,
like the style of storytelling is just so different.
yeah,
But Star Wars prevails.
true.
I'm
On
I
a pure age base, yeah.
I don't think anything in the history of the world, other than maybe the Bible, has aged as well as the original Star Wars trilogy. And even then, after a couple hundred years, you have break off from Christianity that cause problems.
Yeah, I like at least in just the nerd realm. I don't think there's anything else.
Especially when you consider what Star Wars had to survive. And I don't
Yeah.
mean to be like dramatic, but I'm talking about media here. It had to survive going from film to VHSs to DVDs and then the internet and streaming services.
Mm.
It had to survive going from a Vietnam World War II world into a post 9/11,
Yeah. It's
almost like, I would say the current generation is like the most anti-capitalist a generation has been. So, like, this big change from here till now is such a test of time. Like, yes, you can look at physical time lengths, but I think the amount the world has changed in between for Star
Do
Wars
you
to
know?
still be as relevant is
Mm.
crazy.
Something else that actually also adds to Star Wars as well, I think about it, is like, look at how many times Star Wars is referenced in other films as like a cultural icon. I feel like it happens way more with Star Wars than it does with Lord of the Rings.
Absolutely. Family Guy, and I know we spoke about it
Yeah.
earlier, and that's why it's on my mind. Family Guy's entire basis is Seth MacFarlane's childhood, which was the 80s,
Hmm.
which is why it's so many 80s references.
Yeah.
But as much as I adore Lord of the Rings and it is a masterpiece, there is nothing that is so aggressively inspired by
Mm.
Lord of the Rings as Star Wars has aggressively inspired things.
True.
Um, and that is why I think it's
Yeah.
aged better.
I can see that.
This is one of them horrible ones where I'm like, both of these are basically the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
It's like first and second in a 100-person race. I'm not shitting on Lord of the Rings. I adore Lord of the Rings. But Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Rewatchability. This might be one of the most difficult categories for me, I think.
I feel so. This is where, like, because we are at the end and we know how much weight these, like, both are trilogies at their core.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Star Wars is part of a bigger collection as well, but
You
like,
can watch any Star Wars trilogy
as it's, yeah,
internally, though.
part of me wants to say, realistically, it's as simple as, is like the first of a trilogy easier to watch, or is the end of a trilogy easier to watch? And my brain's like, well, you're obviously going to rewatch the start of it more often than you're going to rewatch the end of it. Because with
Hmm.
Star Wars, let's be honest, if someone's like, do you want to watch episode 6? You're like, hang on, let's watch the start, let's watch this all the way through. Whereas if someone's like, let's rewatch Lord of the Rings, like, you're already there, you're starting with the first one.
Yeah. I don't know, it's tricky. Because for
But,
me,
well,
not being inherently a high fantasy fan,
yeah,
because we discussed it, and I always feel like a dick when I say this, like I've got some kind of perfect memory. I don't need to rewatch movies as often to remember the main beats and know where
mm-hmm,
I'm at. So rewatching a later film in a series isn't as big a problem for me as it is for some
okay,
people. Like even Jenna, for instance, like we need to like re-watch the recap of an episode of a show so that she remembers stuff. That's fucking locked in. I'm ready to go. I know what's important. I know what isn't. Um, and because I prefer Star Wars, I think I would find Return of the Jedi easier to rewatch.
I get you.
But then when you talk about them as a trilogy, I'm kind of like, I've got an entire weekend, and my only job is to watch 3 films. Do I choose the Star Wars trilogy or Lord of the Rings trilogy? I think right now I choose the Lord of the Rings trilogy because I'm like, it's been a little bit longer since I've watched any of them. So I'm like, I've got that itch. I'm like, I could go for some orcs and some
So
elves and some magic.
here's another thing to my basis of leaning Lord of the Rings. I tried to watch Lord of the Rings on New Year's Eve, couldn't find it on a streaming service. I didn't go looking for Star Wars, which means I was more likely had Lord of the Rings been there, I would have rewatched it. And it's like, I think I more inherently would want to rewatch the start of Lord of the Rings and then be hooked in for the rest of the trilogy. Whereas if someone like, oh, episode 6 is on, but we're about to put the first Lord of the Rings on, I'll be like, oh, I'll come watch Lord of the Rings. I need to watch the rest first.
Do you know what I think the perfect encapsulation of this problem is?
Go on.
I'm never ever going to tell anyone I don't want to watch Star Wars. I am going to tell someone that I want to watch Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Do you know? Like, someone
Yeah,
puts Star
I get
Wars
what you're
on, I'm
meaning.
going to get trapped in sitting down and watching it. Someone goes, "What do you fancy watching?" I'm much more likely to go for some Lord of the Rings, you know. Um,
even if it is the longer watch.
Yeah. And that is the only problem with Lord of the Rings. You're then locked in for an entire weekend, essentially.
Yeah, but that doesn't bother me.
I know I mentioned it a few weeks ago, but I've told Jenna we need to start a spreadsheet
Oh, yeah.
of things we want to watch in like our first year of being in our home for like the first time again. I'm like Lord of the Rings trilogy. Obviously, we'll have to rewatch all Harry Potter, all Marvel films.
Mm.
I'm like, but then Jenna's comfort film is Rapunzel. Sorry, Tangled,
Yeah.
the Disney version of the
Yeah.
Rapunzel story. I understand that even though I'm not as massive a lover of that film, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to watch that on our sofa in our home together because it's creating new memories.
Yeah.
Films and memories. And that's why rewatchability is such an important topic. Story. Now, this is, I think, the easiest category.
Mm. Yeah, I
I adore
agree.
Star Wars. Lord of the Rings has one of the best written stories in the history of nerd.
It's not where I thought you were actually going with this.
Really?
I mean, J.R.R. Tolkien.
Yes. Lord of the Rings has a far better written
Oh,
story.
I thought you said my
No,
brain
no,
did
no, no.
not process properly then.
Maybe I misspoke. There is a chance. We've both been drinking. We could be fucked here. I
True.
adore Star Wars. Lord of the Rings story is chef's
Yeah.
kiss.
Sorry,
So
yeah.
good.
I thought you said a different word. But yeah,
Yeah.
no. Lord of the Rings story, like, there is a reason J.R.R. Tolkien is like a renowned storyteller, and
Yes.
his books are held in such a high regard.
Yes.
We love Star Wars. We love the world that is built in Star Wars. We love the visuals and the fact that there's lightsabers and all this cool stuff.
George Lucas's strong point has never been writing, though.
Exactly. The story of Star Wars is kind of a simple one, realistically.
Give me the ability to look George Lucas and J.R.R. Tolkien in a room to come up with a world. Now we're cooking. The visuals and the story we get out of that is just perfect.
But
But
yeah,
I don't think it would be morally feasible for us to say that George Lucas wrote a better story than J.R.R.
no,
Tolkien.
I don't think. I think that would be at the end of this
Remiss.
podcast
Yeah.
if we said that. So yeah, Lord of the Rings by far.
Acting.
I feel like this comes back again to, yes, the visuals of Star Wars are amazing. The world and what was built was amazing, but the script is subpar. It's okay.
I think
That's
throughout the
my
entire
opinions.
content championship, we've kind of come back to this point of the actors can only do as well as the script.
Mm-hmm.
I think, basing on how well they acted according to the script, these casts are dead equal.
Mm.
But the cast of Lord of the Rings had a better script to work with.
Yeah.
I adore Harrison Ford and Star Wars and Indiana Jones and everything else he did. I adore Carrie Fisher and everything she did. And Mark Hamill. He was my Luke Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
He was my Joker. I adore the cast, top to bottom, left to right, of both of these projects.
Yep.
But the cast of Lord of the Rings had the better project to work on.
And it was a stacked cast as well.
It was so good. That Lord of the Rings cast is, in my opinion, as an ensemble cast, literally only second to Love Actually. I will die on the hill. Love Actually is the greatest ensemble cast of all time.
I mean, we
Especially
discussed
in
it over
British
Christmas, but
culture.
yeah, for British culture, like it nailed it with everybody.
So yeah, I think acting just by right has to go to
Yeah, it's
Lord of the
just
Rings.
it's part and parcel with the story. Unfortunately, it's just like it goes together.
Cinematography. It's a big one.
This is
Both of these films, I believe, have won cinematography at every stage of the bracket because they are gorgeous films. George Lucas and Peter Jackson, as far as we're concerned, are two of the greatest minds in visual effects history.
I have potentially a bold take here that this is actually very easy.
I think you might have a similar take to me here. Is it along the lines of what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Sort of, yes.
Yeah.
Without,
Okay, cool. I think we're on the same wavelength here.
it's as simple as without Star Wars and George Lucas and what they did with visual effects and practical effects and what ILM produced on a practical level for filmmaking and the techniques and things they put in place for that film and came up with, you would not have had Weta. You would not have had what George Lucas created. And George Lucas wouldn't have been able to think, I can do this practically.
Peter Jackson.
Peter Jackson. Honestly, shouldn't have had too
Yeah.
many tricks.
George Lucas walked so Peter Jackson
Yes.
could run.
Without those, the groundwork built by Lucasfilms and ILM, you wouldn't have got. But the Lord of the Rings films wouldn't have been able to be made in the way that they were made.
While they are so comparably similar, I think that is actually what the point is. They look equally as good, but one happened 20 years earlier.
Mm. There's.
Do you know what it is? It's like that meme of like, look what they need to mimic a fraction of our power.
And don't get me wrong, Lord of the Rings, like, took those base ideas and how to create a film and use practical effects. And Weta went on and created its own, like, took things to a new level and came up with its own tools and its own system, like, and became its own beast. But it is like, comes back to Star Wars came first, Star Wars paved the way and showed it could be done.
What it is it comes down to like, you're brilliant with your graphic design and stuff. You're
Mhm.
brilliant. If fucking Alan Turing hadn't worked out how to crack the Enigma code and like build like the first computer, guess what? What you know doesn't mean dick all, because there wouldn't have been anywhere to do it.
Even simpler, the things that were actually created in Star Wars and Lord of the Rings with early 3D art and modeling for CGI, I wouldn't be able to do half the graphic design stuff I do where I get to play around with Blender and do 3D stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like the tools they created open the door for a whole realm of like artistic capabilities.
Just like we say by rights, story and acting have to go to Lord of the Rings, cinematography has to go to Star Wars and George Lucas, just because it's the
Yeah.
beginning of an entire dynamic shift.
Yeah.
You could go even as far to say that Avatar doesn't exist without George Lucas. At like a base level.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's nuance to it. But George Lucas started this kind of, let's use computers to allow us to take these puppets and these practical ideas and make them better and bigger and brighter and everything.
Yeah.
It is time to tally up the scores.
To crown our champion.
We're going to go bottom to top this time.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So cinematography, we agreed, goes to Star Wars.
Yeah, has to.
Acting and story go to Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Making it 2-1 Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
Rewatchability.
I think it's a tie because I said Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. How well it is aged. Star Wars.
We lent Star Wars.
Which makes it 2-2. And personal relevance is a tie, I believe.
Well, here's the thing. Personal relevance, it was a tie, hard tie for me.
Oh, and I went Star Wars, so it might lean Star Wars.
So it leans Star Wars.
Making Star Wars a 3-2 winner.
Purely because I can't pick.
In your heart of hearts, you can't choose a favourite, therefore Star Wars wins.
And I'm not mad.
No, and this is the thing, I don't think we can be mad. Because
and honestly,
these are both masterpieces.
I think the fact that I'm not immediately disappointed Lord of the Rings didn't win shows that it was the right choice.
Yes.
Because, like we said with some of the points, like Star Wars did come first in it. Some of the things it did really did pave the way. And it would feel wrong.
I think it goes back to Harry Potter versus Return of the Jedi, where it was like tied and we sat here and we're like, no, that isn't right.
Yeah.
So we like reevaluated and we're like, okay, no, it needs to be done this way. Like you say, we're not immediately like, no, that's wrong. The wrong thing has won, which tells us that it's probably the right decision.
Yeah.
There we go. A 3-2 win for Return of the Jedi and Star Wars over Lord of the Rings and J.R.R. Tolkien.
Yeah.
Pandemonium. That is
I'm
the end
sure people will
of the
be
content
upset.
championship.
Yeah, it
Oh,
is.
we're gonna get shouted at.
Probably. But
That is the end of the content championship in this iteration, at least. We may revisit it in the future, but this is the end of the content championship bracket. And from next week, we'll be moving on to the fandom face-off.
yes, which you'll have to catch as its own video because it won't
Yes,
be in the podcast episode.
exactly. If you're a big fan of our battles at the end of each episode, that is going to now be its own separate video. You're such a dedicated fan base that we've decided to give you your own little dedicated time.
So prove it with viewership.
Exactly. So make sure you're liked.
Yep.
Make sure you're subscribed.
Yep.
Make sure you ring that bell. And comment down below what your favourite episode of the last 100 has been.
Yes. And we'll look forward to seeing you on episode 200.
Yes, we do. We will see you next week, however, for episode 101. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
See you next week.